if what you did was so hard, then why didn't you just let your husband stay home and do it? Then you go to work. You have that option. So, and then when we have these
No, we did
conversations
not.
about, when we have, you definitely have the option. You just chose
He
not
was in the
to.
military, so no, I did not have that
That's even
choice.
worse. So again, you still could have worked because,
I
again,
did work.
as a retired veteran, you definitely could work. And the raising of children is not difficult. You guys, this is what women do in these conversations. You guys tend to, and generally speaking, extrapolate to the power of everything. So because you think that you got to feed the kids, get groceries, change the dog, change the kitty litter, that's 4 things. And you think the man going to work is only 1 thing.
You brought up something about as far as people avoiding conversations. And I often hear people ask the question, how do you deal with conflict? And a lot of people will say what the other person want to hear. And they'll say something like along the lines of, well, if you need some space, I'll give you some space. Do you guys agree with giving space, or would you like to have that conversation?
I I personally believe that it's very healthy to request a space so you can regroup your thoughts instead of being reactive. When I was in a marriage, I would definitely allow that time, and then we would circle back, whether it was a few hours later or the next day or even 2 days. But we will communicate that, and we will say, "Hey, you know what? I think I'm too hot about this topic. Let's give it a rest, and we will circle back. Let's talk about tomorrow after dinner or something like that." We will set a time that we can come back to it. It was not swept under the rug, but yeah, it was the best way to handle difficult conversations. So
I kind of like have the same type of thing of what she's saying, but I also think not every single problem needs to be talked about like afterwards. I don't know, because I've been in relationships where like that was the thing, like, okay, let's talk about it later. But I'm like, if it could be solved now, like we don't really have to prolong it, because like what, tomorrow's probably gonna have their own issues, and then what, you're gonna like try to remember every single problem. Like it's just like, to me it's like a bit too much to like think about. So if it's like big problems, then sure, like we can like, and if the emotions are high, then we can like wait and chill and then come back to it later. But if it's like something that's like takes 2 seconds to talk about, we can talk about it. I don't think it needs to be dwelled upon. But yeah.
I think it really depends on what you guys communicate with first, because, going into something, you have to know some people may be more emotional and some people may be more passive. And I think it's important to be able to get those, like your communication styles out of the way early on. So this way you don't have these issues, because if you don't address something, right, it builds up, all these little small things build up to bigger issues. And then a person, and I'll say a person, like a lot of times women have a level of resentment because they feel like they're not being seen, and the way they're being seen, the way they want to be seen is kind of emotional. So I'm all for saying, hey, listen, this is one of those times where, let's just give ourselves some time. I think I've seen, I have a friend of mine who, her and her husband, they have been very successful with communication because they address to each other. There's like this word that they use, and that means, okay, this is like my time where you're not going to get through to me. So when emotions are high, you really can't reason with a person or even have that kind of commonality.
As far as the clip goes, I mean, that's that man's fault for not setting the tone in his home. Anytime a man's willing, he tolerates that. That's why he has to go sit in his car. So if he set the tone in his house and he led his household, his wife would know better than conduct herself that way. And if he was the kind of guy that required her to comport herself in a different manner, then she would. But to True's point, nobody wants to come home to that. Like that's the worst thing a man who's been outside slaying dragons and fighting crime and shit, a modern black ass Batman, if you will. He doesn't want to come home to shit like that. Like, there's no way I want to come home to that. Like, because what's weird is that, when she's out in town, she puts her best face on. But when he comes home to this shit. And then the second thing that bothered me was how she woke him up. Like, who in the fuck wants to be dead sleep and then be woke up by somebody nagging and shit in a fucking purple teddy bear costume? Like, I don't understand, like, why she thought this was okay. And, like, just look at her face. There's no concern. There's no compassion. It's just straight, like, aggression. Like one of the problems I have with a lot of women in relationships is when it comes to their men, they don't lead with curiosity. They lead with their emotional needs. Like they need to understand, they need to find out why. And she's just a example of everything, a lot of things that men find wrong with women. And for his responsibility, again, you're the man. You set the tone. So if that's what you're willing to accept, there's no way that I'm paying all the bills or half the bills or 75% of the bills in a home that I have to sit in the parking lot or my driveway to get peace in. That's crazy. Like I will remove you from the home before I allow that to happen. So there's that. And then for what everybody said, there's it's the standard responses. Women trying to understand another woman's bad behavior because it's just encoded in their DNA. And then a couple people making, well, what about if this, and then someone brought up the housewife part or the stay-at-home mom part is that's a real hard fucking job. And it's not. Like compared to what she's doing, compared to what he's doing, that he can provide her that opportunity, that's your job. That's your role in a relationship. So you don't get credit for doing your job. So these conversations, there's only two paths they can take, and you took the same path we think they usually do.
You about to say something, Shayan?
It's so hard to hide it on my face. I would say, sorry, can you hear me now? Okay. I actually kind of disagree with what you said a while ago about it's just your job and shouldn't get credit for doing your job. I think it's really important to show appreciation, and also taking care of the kids and all the house duties is still a very important job, and it's still a lot of work. If someone is doing the bare minimum, then I mean, cool, you can argue that, but the role of a mother it's a very hard job. I'm not a mother, but being a child of a mother that didn't do the bare minimum, I can see that it did take a lot of work, putting your kids in extracurricular activities, tending to your children every hour of the day, just doing different things that isn't the bare minimum, that is very much hard work. So I think especially in a household that should be appreciated, and it's still hard work. So that's what I would say.
It kind of hit too close to home when he said that that it's not hard to run a household. It's easier to say than done. Somebody that has not run a household completely a tight home, in my case, I had 4 children. I work outside the house, and I also taking care of my husband in my house. It was a lot of work because I woke up before anybody else did, and I went to bed after everybody else did. And you have to keep up with the meals, the cleanliness, the clothing, whatever is missing from the groceries or whatever. As my husband, the only duty he had, it was just to go to work and come home. I had to do all the work before and after everybody. So it was a lot of work for me. That I chose to do that? Absolutely. That I took pride on doing it? You must believe that. But it is a lot of work, and it's nice when somebody notices, says like, "Hey, mama, the house smells good," or "Hey, dinner was awesome," or "You know what? Let's order pizza tonight so you can just watch your trash TV or whatnot." That didn't happen very often because it's just the rhythm that we acquire. But it is a lot of work. So to get this credit on that part, it's kind of a little hard to hard pill to swallow per se.
Period.
The
Michelle.
unfortunate
Oh.
part is I didn't discredit anything. What I did is I just gave it a different amount of credit than you see value in. If what you did was so hard, then why didn't you just let your husband stay home and do it? Then you go to work. You have that option. So, and then when we have
No,
these
we did
conversations
not.
about when we have you definitely have the option. You just chose
He
not
was
to.
in the military, so no, I did not have that
That's even
choice.
worse. So again, you still could have worked because
I did work.
as a retired veteran, you definitely could work. And the raising of children is not difficult. You guys, this is what women do in these conversations. You guys tend to, and generally speaking, extrapolate to the power of everything. So because you think that you got to feed the kids, get groceries, change the dog, change the kitty litter, that's 4 things. And you think the man going to work is only 1 thing. So your 4 things means more than the 1 thing that he did, which is what allows you to provide, to have that actual ability to not have to do the majority of the financial providing for your household. And that's
not what I said.
That's exactly what
I did not say that my 4 things was a lot more than what he did.
That's implied in what she mentioned, because remember.
No.
Okay, do you hear what I said, that I work outside the household?
Let me finish, and then when it's time for you to respond to what I'm saying and not what you think I'm going to say. Jay, same thing for you. When you have these conversations, it's as if you guys make it seem the man only does 1 thing, and what you said was, well, I have to do this, this, and this, and all you have to do is go to work. All he had to do was work. So again, you took all the small things you do, which is part of the 1 job you had, and made it everything compared to what he had to do. That's the problem, because you don't value what it is he's having to do, because if you did, you wouldn't have said, well, I have to do all of these things. He only has to go to work. And that's the problem that I have when we have these conversations. It's not difficult to run a household. You'd have to run a household if you didn't have kids. It would just be yours. So you don't get credit for doing the stuff you're supposed to do as an adult parent. You chose to be a parent. No one made you. No one put a gun to your head. You chose and volunteered for that. So because you volunteered for that situation, you set up your marriage. You agreed to the terms and conditions of your marriage. You don't get credit for operating inside of those agreed upon terms and conditions. There's not extra credit. That doesn't mean that what you did isn't important. But what it does mean is that you're not doing anything special or above and beyond what you agreed to do. You have a choice.
I would like. Go ahead.
Okay, so